Svidler for Chess24, and my first video in the Tal series. This video will be dedicated to the early years of Mikhail Tal, and the games I've chosen for this video are somewhat one-sided, but I wanted to illustrate just how big an advantage in tactical complications Tal had in the early years over generally fairly decent opposition, and just how unused people were to his style of play. And these two games, I think, illustrate it fairly well, even if the chess content is, as I said, reasonably one-sided. The two games I've chosen are from 1956 and 1957, and we'll start with a game Tal played with black against Gurgenidze in 1957. Bohuti played d4. And immediately it becomes obvious that Tal's repertoire was built with his particular strength in mind. Black plays knight f6, c4, c5, and opts for the Benoni structures, where play is very unbalanced and asymmetrical, and players who have a better understanding of dynamics and better tactical awareness perhaps have the bigger edge. e6, knight c3 takes, knight f3, g6. These days, White's play in this line is more varied, and perhaps the two more popular lines against the Benoni these days are e4, bishop g7, and in this position h3, bishop d3, and also there are a lot of lines where White develops his bishop to g2. But in those years, I think the most popular system against the Benoni structures was the classical one, where White goes bishop e2, castles, and then plays knight d2, trying to secure a very, very beautiful square for this knight on c4. And this is what Gurgenidze played. In this position, I think objectively, first of all, if given the opportunity, Black generally plays bishop g4 and takes on f3. This opportunity is now gone, and in this position, I suspect the more critical approach is to play knight d7 and knight e5. But what Tal did is also a well-known way of developing his pieces. I myself landed in this position in my match against Anna Ushenina in the Tromsø World Cup, and I played b6 in this position, and soon had a very, very unpleasant game. And Tal went knight a6 with a similar plan in mind, as you will see. Rook e1 is a normal developing move. I don't think there's much wrong with it. Knight c7. Now that the knight is on c7, White happily plays a4, because if Black wants to put his knight on b4, he now has to lose an additional tempo putting it back on a6. Tal plays b6 in this position, perhaps aiming in some positions to play bishop a6 and just generally making a development move. And there are many options available to White in this position. Bishop f1 is one, and maybe even f2, f3, aiming to play knight c4 straight away. But what Gurgenidze did is also a very, very natural move. Queen c2. And now White is ready to play knight c4 next move, to which Tal replies by playing knight g4. And in this position, objectively speaking, if White takes on g4, bishop takes g4 and goes knight c4, Black's position is very, very unpleasant, because he's ended up, I think, with the wrong light pieces, and the pawn on d6 will be under severe pressure the moment the bishop arrives on f4. And generally speaking, in this position, I think Black is facing a very unpleasant defensive task. Instead of which, Gurgenidze, who was a very decent player, even if this game will not really be able to demonstrate that, he shows a somewhat amazing, to me, naivete in approaching a game against a player such as Tal, because once Black plays knight g4, it's safe to assume he has some kind of a tactical idea in mind, not only queen h4, which looks obvious, but also something else. And to play h2, h3 in this position, which is what Gurgenidze did, shows that people were still unprepared. Perhaps I'm making too general a conclusion from one game, but I think it would be fair to say that people were somewhat unprepared to the level of aggression Tal was capable of unleashing at any point if you gave him half an opening. And h3 here is just very, very bad objectively, and a player lesser than Mikhail Tal would probably have found the refutation, but in his hands you can be certain this is already maybe a winning position for black. Knight takes f2, of course. The knight never planned to return. King f2, queen h4 check. King f1 is the only move. Bishop d4, bishop knight d1. And strictly speaking, even bishop takes h3 is very, very strong here. But of course, Tal plays queen takes h3. I think in his approach to chess, aesthetics played a very, very significant role, and making a move like this on the board is, well, a pleasant sensation. Bishop f3, queen h2, and black is obviously, black has a fantastic attack here, and the bishop will come to a6, and white has trouble meeting even those threats, but black also needs to open up some files for the rooks, so f5 will be a very logical way of opening the E and F files for the rooks to join in the attack, which is what happened in the game. Objectively, I think this position is already beyond salvation for white. If white goes, let's say, knight c4, black plays f5, knight f2, bishop a6, and there are some prosaic ways of losing this for white, such as, for instance, bishop e3, f e4, knight takes e4, bishop e3, rook e3 takes on c4, and then check and take on a1, and black will win the endgame arising after knight f6, check, king f7. But if white, after knight f2, bishop a6, tries to at least temporarily stop the black attack and plays a4, a5, the machine suggested a very, very funny way of winning this position with black, which I thought I might show you because it just made me laugh out loud when I saw it on the screen. F e4, rook e4, rook e4, knight e4, and in this position the machine suggested that black could play b5, driving the knight onwards to d6, and then just attack the knight by playing knight e8, and white has to simply give up the knight altogether, because if white takes on e8, now before discovered check, just delivers mate, because white needed to be able to play knight d6, c4 in this position. But the move Buhuti Gurgenidze played also doesn't help. He went knight e3, to which black replied f5. Instead of f5, a very funny idea, I would say, is to play knight a6, aiming to put the knight on b4 and then develop the bishop to a6, and in this fashion to include absolutely every single piece in the attack. But f5 just wins quite efficiently, so there is no need for those geometry motifs to come into play. If white tries to run with the king here, king e2, black will take on e3, king e3, knight takes d5, forcing the king back to the corner, and now queen h4 check, g3, queen h2 check, bishop g2, and knight f6 is perhaps the easiest way to win. The knight comes to g4, and the white's position completely collapses. And in the game after knight dc4, black took on e4, bishop e4, bishop a6, and this position is just totally winning. Black wins with almost any legal move, bishop f3. I quite like in this position the idea of playing rook f8, king e2, and rook takes f3, king takes f3. And in this position, maybe the most effective way to kill off the game is to play rook e8, cutting off the e file as an escape route for the white king, and then black will converge on the king and give mate. But what Tal did is also fine. He went rook e5, rook a3, rook a8, and now black is ready to at least win back all the material. And the game continued, bishop d2, knight takes d5, bishop d5, rook d5, and after king e2, bishop e3, rook e3, bishop takes c4. White finally resigned, because if he takes on c4, queen g2, king d1, and queen takes d2 is mate. Now, as I said, this is a somewhat one-sided game, which is, from a purely chess perspective, perhaps not that interesting, and generally speaking, a game like this, these days you will not encounter very frequently in a game between two high-level players, and this was played in the Soviet Championship. But I think it illustrates my original point that people were generally very unprepared to deal with Tal's aggressive style and his incredible tactical awareness. And the second game I picked is a game from 1956 where Tal played white against Alexander Tolosh, a game, a player who was also a very, very sharp and a very gifted tactician. But here, well, you could say this was a bit of an opening disaster, but in those years, I don't think home preparation in the openings played as big a part as it does today. And I'm fairly certain that Tal's refutation of Tolosh's opening play was not a product of his home preparation, but was found over the board. And it's very, once again, it's very illustrative, I think, of just how dangerous he was when handed initiative from an early stage in a game. c5, knight f3, d6, black goes for the Najdorf, bishop g5, e6, f4, queen b6. This is the famous poison pawn variation, which I mean, the theory of this variation is still developing to this day, and it's a very exciting line. And this game will feature a lot of ideas which are currently considered to be somewhat incorrect, let's put it like this, but it's still, I think, an interesting game to just glance through. Queen d2, queen b2, rook b1, queen a3. In this position, white obviously has two main moves, e5 and f5. Tal went e5, takes, knight fd7, and I'm sorry, knight e4. And here, current theory considers h6 to be the main move. And in fact, a year after the game between Tal and Tolosh, Tolosh beat Korchnoi by including h6 and bishop h4, and then repeating the moves he made against Tal, queen takes a2. Currently in this position, the main move is of course rook d1, and after queen d5, queen e3, you get a position which has been very, very extensively discussed at the very top level, and this is what the main line looks right now. But in those years, people thought that allowing the queen back to d5 is a mistake, so rook b3 was considered to be the main response, and this is what Korchnoi did against Tolosh. Queen a1 check, king f2, queen a4. This is what this is the same position as you will see momentarily in the game, but with the inclusion of h6 and h4. And here the combination that Tal played is impossible, because after bishop b5, a b5, knight takes b5, black can play bishop c5 check, and after knight takes c5, the queen can take on h4, which is completely impossible, of course, without the inclusion of h6 and bishop h4. But in 1956, Tolosh played queen a2, and in this position, I suspect the best move for white is still rook d1, because after rook b3, black could still, and this is the very, very final moment in the game where he can do this, black could still play h6. And I looked at this position a little bit just to figure out what the official assessment is, and it seems to me that black is very, very, very much alive after h6. And in view of this, perhaps the whole line is not as doomed for black as it maybe is considered to be currently. But Tolosh had another idea in mind. He went queen a1 check, king f2, and queen a4. As a side note, if black goes after rook b3, queen a4 immediately, the same idea that Tal played in the game still works. Bishop b5, a b5, and castles. And white's attack is just too dangerous. It seems to me that even with the very, very best defense here, black can hope for some bad endgames at best. Queen a1, king f2, queen a4 is seemingly a logical way to proceed. Black is threatening knight c6, and the king on f2 will, in some positions, come under, well, not attack, but will be checked with a tempo, and it's harder to attack along the f file because the king is in the way as compared to the lines where white can castle straight away. But even here, white wins in at least two different ways. The most efficient way to win here is to play knight takes e6, which has already been mentioned in an excellent book by Tal and Damsky, an autobiography of Mikhail Tal's. Knight e6, f e6, knight d6, check, bishop d6, queen d6 just wins on the spot. And the fact that this wins straight away makes me fairly certain that the move Tal made in this position was found over the board, because as a product of home preparation, I think knight takes e6 is a much more natural and a much easier win for white. But Tal went bishop b5, a b5, and knight takes b5, creating an obvious threat of knight c7 check. The only move for black here is f6, ef6, gf6, and rook e1. And I'm very, very certain that once again, having found this idea, it was almost impossible for Tal not to play it, because it's such a natural flowing way of continuing the attack. White has already sacrificed one piece, and now the other one is left unprees to include the h1 rook in the onslaught, and black is almost completely lost here, in fact. And the best way to defend here, according to the machine, is to go knight c6, and after bishop takes f6, black has to return the queen straight away by playing queen takes e4, rook takes e4, and knight takes f6. This allows black to continue for a while, but I think with his development problems and the material still favoring white a little bit, white is a favorite to win here and win reasonably easily, I think. Instead of this, Tolosh went rook a6, trying to defend against the threat of knight d6 check and trying not to return as much material straight away. But after bishop f6, knight f6, and king f7, white is completely winning, and the best way to finish the game off efficiently would have been to play knight e4 here, which cuts off the a4 queen from the defense, and now black is just completely helpless against the threats of rook f3, queen f4 check, and for a single piece, black is faced with such a plethora of threats that he can pretty much resign here. Instead of this, Mikhail Tal he played rook f3, which is also a very natural and a very sort of pleasing to the eye move, including the final piece in the attack. But this prolongs the games a little bit, because black can play queen h4 check, including the queen in the defense. Both king g1 and king f1 win here. Tal chose king f1, and here black has to play e5, trying to at least include some more pieces in the defense, and the rook on a6 is now at least an active participant in the game. And here Tal went somewhat wrong. Objectively, the best way to win here is to play knight h5 check. If king g8, white gives a check on g3, king f7, and queen f2 check, and black loses a lot of material here. And if king g6, then rook g3 check, bishop g4, and simply h2, h3. And black will be forced to part with his queen. For instance, after rook f6 check, king g1, queen h5, rook takes g4. Black has to take on g4, and he is totally lost after that, because he's a queen down, and his position still hasn't improved basically one bit. So this is perhaps the most mathematically correct way of finishing the game off here. But once again, I think if Tal had seen it, and I'm sure he had considered knight h5 check in this position, it perhaps didn't appeal to him to start just winning back material, and he wanted to give mate here, which is why I think he went for queen d5 check. But here actually black has some sudden chances to make a game out of it. Bishop e6. A very beautiful move wins if black goes king g6. In fact, the only one move wins in this position, and it's knight e8, cutting the king off from the g7 square. And once you find this move, the rest falls into place, because with the 7th rank completely unavailable for the black king, the checks will be decisive here. Instead, black goes bishop e6, of course, and in this position, after knight d7 check, black had to find a very surprising defense. The whole previous play was an attempt by black to get the king away from the center, away from the attacking rooks. And in view of this, king e7 looks a bit strange, because you seem to be driving the king back into the absolute danger. And after queen c5 check, king takes g7 runs into rook d1 check, and black is mated on the spot. But in fact, after queen c5 check, black can play king e8, and in this position it is surprisingly difficult for white to find an immediate victory. And perhaps the best he has is queen c8 check, king e7, queen takes b8, to which black will reply bishop g7, and after queen b7, queen c4 check, king g1, queen c8. Black suddenly and miraculously managed to coordinate his pieces well enough to force white into some kind of an endgame. There is a choice of endgames here for white, but all of them are technically difficult, and black retains serious chances to actually save the game. But instead of this, Tolush commits his final mistake. He goes king g6, and now after knight takes e5, king g7, rook g3 check, queen takes g3, and queen takes b7. White emerges from the complications, a queen up with continuing attack, and the game was soon over. Once again, I want to restate that I understand these two games were perhaps not as well played by Tal's opponents as we would all have liked from the purely aesthetic point of view. This is very, very one-sided, and I promise that the rest of the videos will feature games which are much more hard-fought than these. But I thought it would be interesting to see just what the early games looked like, because even in these two games, Tal's opponents were not kids in a simul. These are very, very strong chess players, and the competition is the Soviet Championship. But still, Tal was quite clearly head and shoulders above the field in understanding of dynamics and tactical ability, and I thought it might be interesting to see just how big a gulf was between him and the people he was playing against in those years, in those disciplines.